iPhone market share is doing this, and Android market share is doing this. Don't get mad at me, I'm just telling you what the numbers say. Why is it that way, though? Out of the top 10 selling phones from the last year, 7 of them, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them are iPhones. So that's the news part. Out of the top 10 selling phones of 2023, 7 of them were iPhones. If I were any other tech YouTuber, this is the part where I would collect the ad revenue and send you home. But I'm an older, wiser me now, and I want to know why. Everyone knows iPhones are popular, they literally always have been, but this level of representation in the global smartphone market is a bit unheard of, at least compared to a long time ago. There's been a, let's call it a shift in how and why people buy a new phone, when they do, or even their first phone. And the market didn't used to be this way. Not even a little bit, actually. Like, look at this. This is a report from Q2 2014 and 2015. Look at the diversity, people. The smartphone market was a completely different landscape back then. What happened? This is how I rabbit-holed myself, honestly. This episode was just meant to be about the smartphone sales report from 2023, but seeing that graph reminded me of, well, a lot of stuff. I think in order for us to truly understand the lack of competition in the market right now, not just for Apple and iPhone, but in general, we're gonna need to go way back. Let's say, I don't know, a decade? We, consumers, nerds, geeks, and everyone else, we were deep in a war fought with circuit boards and touchscreens, processors and headphone jacks, and then all of a sudden, we weren't. I am, of course, referring to the smartphone wars. This was our Vietnam, fellas! Okay, yeah, so maybe that was big exaggeration on my part. What I am saying, though, is you think people care now about iPhone versus Android? Back just a few years ago? It was serious business. These companies were doing everything in their power to stand out. From 1 camera to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 10, however many they have now. No headphone jack. Oh look, wireless charging. Ooh, replaceable batteries. How about scroll with your eyeballs? That's cool, huh? Oh, and then whatever the hell LG was doing. It was just madness. And if you were around for this era of smartphone, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you weren't, just know that BlackBerry was still around, still a thing, they existed, and they were causing problems for everyone. Apple was there, of course, and Samsung and Google, Huawei, Xiaomi, whatever. LG hadn't shut down their smartphone division yet. They had a much bigger presence back then, with many more smaller players all in the same boat, fighting for the same pool of consumers. I don't think you truly understand how dark these times were. We had Amazon Fire smartphones. That was real. Firefox smartphones? Yep, also real. Flip phones were even still a valid choice for some. And yeah, the big ugly elephant in the room. Please welcome to the stage, everybody. The BlackBerry Passport. What a nightmare. This battle for market relevance went on for years until you could literally see the homogenization of the smartphone market. Look, guys, there were people actually buying Windows phones in 2015. Most of the stuff that I just went on about is not a thing anymore. Looking around nowadays, things are very different, and there really isn't so much variety. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's always gonna be weird stuff out there if you're gonna go looking for weird stuff, but weird stuff is never gonna be mainstream ever again. It's iPhone and Samsung Galaxy, maybe Google Pixels, and then that is about it. Are things better now? I mean, history lesson out of the way, right? What actually happened? Well, I think I know exactly what happened, and I'll tell you after the money part. You know, Macs give me a lot of happiness. What they don't give me, though, is ports. That's why today's episode is sponsored by our friends over at Ivanki and their brand new Fusion Dock Max 1. Okay, so first of all, look at all these ports! This dock is exclusively designed and engineered for Apple Silicon, and yes, you're looking at support for quad displays. The Fusion Dock Max 1 has dual Thunderbolt 4 chips for enhanced performance and versatility. It's a dock that actually looks great on your desk. Like, look at it. It looks like serious business. It's reliable and offers you virtually any port that you think you've been missing. Not only do I plug my display in here, I plug, well, everything else in here too. That way I could just plug this straight into my Mac and everything works at the same time. When I'm done, pick up the Mac, go. Also, Ivanki, thank you so much. An SD card slot on here means even my MacBook Air can join the party. This has made my life and my team's life so much easier, and working on a Mac just became a little more seamless. Grab yours now by clicking the link in the description below. And of course, a huge thanks to Ivanki for, well, one, sending it to us, but also sponsoring this episode. If we don't look at the current smartphone market as a dystopian nightmare hellscape, how's everything looking? Well, for starters, even if things are boring and there's a lot of similarities between smartphone choices, it's actually pretty okay. However, I think there is one major key thing that just doesn't happen anymore. When is the last time you saw someone switch sides? Like iPhone to Android or Android to iPhone? Don't worry. I'll wait. In fact, it seems to me that most consumers today are pretty locked down to their ecosystem of choice. You don't pick a phone anymore. You pick an ecosystem. And one of the biggest differences between now and things back then is actually time. Since then, there's been enough time accumulated to where if you've been in an ecosystem for any amount of those years, you are in now. Like, the time has accumulated, it is built up, and now you're kinda stuck. In the United States, 87% of teenagers say they own an iPhone. First of all, what? That is an insane number, but second of all, what happens to those teenagers when they grow up? Yep, now they're adults with iPhones. You see? Say what you want about Apple's marketing, but getting them at an early age and locking them into an ecosystem as they get older is like maybe the best business strategy ever. And they're not gonna switch. What, they're gonna spend years on the iPhone and then switch to, and that's not what, let me ask you a question, right? Whether you're on an iPhone right now or an Android device, if you were to switch teams, switch sides today, how much would that kind of ruin your life a little bit? If today I had to give up the iPhone, my life would be a nightmare, and it would be a nightmare real fast. And that is nothing negative towards Android devices, kinda, but it's the ecosystem. Everything would be ruined. Assessing my own terrible purchasing decision situation, there's iPhone, Apple Watch, Apple TV, HomePods, so many AirPods, Macs, and now Vision Pro. I have like personal equity in the Apple ecosystem, and if even just one of those goes, let alone the head of the beast, the iPhone, I'm in trouble. There's a good chance at this point, whether you're using an iPhone or an Android device, you're kinda locked in and probably not even considering another option next year. I mean, when you have your next upgrade, are you even wondering to yourself, am I gonna buy an iPhone or Android? The answer to that is probably no. You probably already know what your next phone is, even if you're not ready to buy one right now. And that's kinda Apple's fault. In fact, it was their plan all along, and it worked really well. Scary well. Smartwatches, tablets, entire lines of accessories. It's there on the Android side of things too, make no mistake. It's the dream of all of these companies to get you rooted into their own slice of the market and keep you there for many years. Apple's ecosystem exists for normal, healthy, emotionally regulated people who have too much money and not enough sense. Maybe they are afraid to think for themselves, certainly afraid to be a green bubble because Sam Cole will find out and spit on you. And Android exists for all those people who think Apple's whole shtick is stupid. Some would argue these people actually enjoy technology a bit more. Maybe they even want to F around and find out, see where that custom firmware rabbit hole takes them. Either way, the teams still exist, right? There's still people that love iOS, there's still people that love Android. It's just enough time has accumulated to where those people are staying longer, and because earlier on people are buying an iPhone as their first phone as a teenager, or maybe their parents are buying it for them, and their whole family is in that ecosystem, those people are growing up, and the iPhone market share is growing up with it. And what we're left with, instead of an outright bloody smartphone war with battles for the market raging every release cycle, It's more of a Cold War. What certainly is different now than it was then is everything is sort of great. Every smartphone is great, all the cameras are great, all the OSs are great, and if everything is great, nothing is great. And you know what? I'm glad we're having this conversation now because the smartphone wars are on their way out. And the future? Well, the future is headed somewhere else. Speaking of Vision Pro, this thing got me to make my first review video ever. That's live right now. You should go watch that next. And you know what? I promise, you will never look at tech reviews the same way ever again.